ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
So this is sort of a deep dive into what I think the problems are at Lucasfilm and Hollywood as a whole over the last 20 years. This is critical theory, and it was something that was sort of evolving in the 1920s in Germany after World War I. And basically, there was a school of philosophers that got together to come up with this thing called critical theory. And the Frankfurt School was what it's called, the Institute for Social Research at the University of Frankfurt on Main. That university, by the way, is now called the Goethe University or the Goethe School, named after the poet, Goethe University. In Frankfurt. It is, here's something I found. Cisgender privilege, intersectionality, microaggressions, patriarchy, oppression, racism, LGBTQ+, white privilege, etc. What happened here? Okay, let me explain. These were Marxists who were not happy with the way Marxism was being presented. You can only go so far getting the workers of the world to unite when and if the middle class is happy in their lives. So what they did is they came up with this definition, understanding power and inequality, blah, blah, blah. They're Marxists. So what they did was they devised ideas and basically theories to attack normal society. Now let's go forward to 2010, 2011, around there. Andrew Breitbart, the great Andrew Breitbart, he started Breitbart.com. He was an agent provocateur for the right. In my opinion, there was nothing conservative about him. What he was not necessarily a populist, but a guy who saw what was going on in the culture and thought it was wrong, because what he saw were people who weren't being allowed to speak, who didn't feel comfortable speaking, who had to go to secret meetings in Hollywood to talk politics because the left had such a control over Hollywood. And this is before wokeism. This is before the realities of this silly thing called critical theory came to really be. And how did it come to be? Well, guys like Theodor Adorno here in the 1930s in Germany fled Germany because they're Marxists. Hitler really wasn't that stupid, and they were going to be thrown in camps or killed outright. So they fled, they came to the United States. This guy would sit, look out in California, look out across the beach, and he couldn't understand why Americans were just happy living their lives. Homes, families, jobs, etc. And this is during the Depression. But there's a whole thing going on with the Depression that people don't talk about. And so they came up, him and his buddies that escaped, came up with an idea to infect colleges and universities with their ideas, to the point where kids would go to school, and instead of being given the tools to learn how to think critically, they were being indoctrinated, right? Critical theory is about indoctrination. It's about taking kids and telling them, you're bad because you're white, you're bad because you're a man, you're bad because your country's never done anything good, blah, 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 and them believing it. And that's exactly what they've done, and you see it every day in Hollywood. And it doesn't matter if the actor or the actress or the whatever is an American-born citizen or somebody from another country. This infection about critical race theory, or critical theory, and critical race theory of one of its children, is spread across the planet, right? It started when these guys got to the United States. They put it in the universities. They got it into Hollywood. All right. Now, in the beginning, this Marxist bullshit was overt. And you've got the House on Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, to go through it, and people like Elia Kazan and others named names. There's a reason why Dalton Trumbull, there's a reason why Sean Penn's father's name was on the list. And there were others. Arthur Miller was one that people looked at hard. And the reason why is because they were overtly commies, right? Critical race theory smoothed out the loudness, even though you had professors in the 60s doing the same thing, right? And these professors were the ones behind the Vietnam War riots, the so-called free speech movement at Berkeley that Tom Hayden led. This is all a result of critical theory and these people migrating, I'm going to use that, to the United States because they were a different brand of socialist and Hitler didn't like them. Now, again, why were they upset? They were upset with Marxism because they felt Marxism, it's fine if you go tell the workers of the world to unite, but you're not going to get anywhere in the end. You have to get the middle class. When they got to the United States, like I said, Theodore Adorno crying at happy people with jobs, middle class, you had to undermine the family. You had to undermine the social fabric. And when you look at the word salad of intersectional bullshit, LGBTQ plus shit, feminism, they took over feminism to the point where now women are being erased in sports because now they want men to take over everything. They want to erase the female. And this is what's going on. Again, it's the word salad here. I mean, look at everything that you see in front of you. This is what critical theory evolved into. Critical race theory, intersectionality, like I said, white privilege. All these are lies. Social justice doesn't mean to them what it would mean to us. Social justice is taking from the middle class because we're selfish and we have too much and spreading the wealth around. Look, Barack Obama was the perfect example of this. And he was an apostle of Saul Alinsky, which we will get into later in this series. If you want to get familiar with him, go look him up on Google and look up his rules for radicals. But let's talk about the activists at Lucasfilm.
Excuse me. I believe I asked you to put a chick in this and make her gay.
This is like what we understand to be Star Wars, like the idea that like that only came from George Lucas, that only George Lucas holds the key for what we understand to be Star Wars is just untrue. And I think the prequels are an excellent example of that. I mean, the idea that like when you're hiring a director, that everyone is sitting in there waiting for George Lucas and not for the person who's going to know to hire Ralph McQuarrie, that's the problem. That's the misogyny and the problem with the auteur myth as it stands today, because they're not thinking this is the person that will hire the right people and this is the person that will be able to create the lookbooks and direct people to get them.
For 10 long weeks, the Star Wars company labored on the suburban London sound stages, bringing to life a film that had begun as an idea with George Lucas 3 years before.
So let's talk about the activists that showed up at Lucasfilm. We have Pablo Hidalgo here. He is an immigrant, double immigrant, once from Chile to Canada, then from Canada to the United States. Apparently on his Blue Sky bio, he has a Chilean flag and a Canadian flag and no American flag. Okay. This guy was raised from a runt to be a critical theorist Marxist, right? What he doesn't understand is that, in my opinion, these things that he shouts from the rooftop aren't Marxism, they're fascism. Because he gets to live in San Francisco, make a very good living, most expensive city in the world, and he gets to keep all that. That's not communism. That's not Marxism. That's fascism. Okay, so let's dispense with that. Back in 2013, and this is from Ichibaka, right? And I've asked for permission to go into his archives so I can find the blog. He went on, and I'm talking about Pablo, went on because it's a blog about Pablo in 2013 going on to a podcast, YouTube show, talking about Star Wars. And at the end of it, he told the channel, the host, and his other guest that they were getting rid of the EU. Now, okay, and replace it with what? Well, they replaced it with garbage because they wanted to make a coherent canon, and it's worse now than it ever has been, but that's not the point. The big thing that stuck out with me was when he said it was being aimed to indoctrinate children, and I'm paraphrasing Ichibaka. I need to find that. I want to read that blog so I can actually get back into it. In fact, I have a video from December 2018 about it. But let's talk more about the other activists. So this is Justina Ireland. Obviously, critical race theory here. Another product of critical theory. She's I guess an instructor at York University, York, Pennsylvania University, whatever. And she wrote some books for the High Republic. She basically said, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my books. Okay, fine. And we didn't. I didn't. You didn't. Nobody did. Because instead of hiding their hatred of normal stuff, like traditional families and everything, she put it out there. All right, Ryan Johnson, probably the worst one. Born in America, he's anti-faith. His parents were obviously very down-to-earth Christians, which he rejected wholeheartedly. If you look at The Last Jedi, it is completely exactly what Adorno and the rest of these critical theory slobs wanted. He deconstructed Luke Skywalker. He deconstructed George Lucas. That is everything critical theory wants to attempt. And, you know, you can be liberal. Bill Maher's liberal. George Lucas is liberal. To the point where I think George thinks that Richard Nixon hides under his bed at night. But this goes a step beyond. When you get Bill Maher attacking communism, and this guy in the picture is a cultural Marxist, you've got actual Democrats saying, we have gone too far in this direction. There's a certain point where even on the left, you gotta say enough is enough. And the attack on Western masculinity is one of the things that really stands out in what they've done to the franchise and what they did to Indiana Jones, quite frankly. And this is what the series is about. We're going to take the historical philosophers that started this cultural Marxism, and we're going to apply it everywhere we can in the franchise of Star Wars and maybe even Indiana Jones. And the next one is going to probably be about Kathleen Kennedy, but I'm not sure. Anyway, this is just an introduction, okay? I'm going to put links in the description for Saul Alinsky, for the cultural Marxists and philosophers, and some other things I think you guys should read. All right, I didn't want to get into too many details. So this is Steph, signing out. See you around the galaxy.